5 people who've described it as the aha moment. It seems to be the theme of this year's Agile Games.
Yeah.
So what are the sort of aha moments that you witnessed in your workshop?
It's interesting that you asked that, because a whole lot of the work that's going on in the work world today is relying on the mental, the cognitive, the intellect. And where people recognized they were getting caught up was on their emotional attachment to what was going on. So there's a wider set of intelligences that we're needing to access. That's at every level. Agile management, it doesn't matter who you are, at every level of the company, it's about bringing more of yourself to work and tapping into and learning how to work with more of who you are. So it goes beyond survival to working with your emotions effectively for decision making, and I'm a nerd in that department, so that's a key part of it. But also beyond that is just what other parts, what can we know by not knowing? What can we learn from each other by not knowing? So the aha moments had a lot to do with, boy, I had no idea that I was, I'm stuck on that. I'm stuck on this, and I need to shift. And emotionally, I'm attached. I'm having it hard to get the distance and the objectivity. And that's really central, because you can't pivot anywhere unless you can step back in the moment and be mindful in the moment, and then make that turn that corner.
You said a little bit earlier that you were kind of a nerd on
Decision making.
Talk about what makes you sort of an exceptional understander seems like not a word. But what makes you what experience have you had that have helped you be such a good expert at decision making?
There's two answers to that. First, I wrote Decision Making for Dummies. And, I've seen, and when you ask you to write something like that, okay, the decision making really looks simple. You just make a decision. Everybody does it. It's 95% of our decisions are made on autopilot. You have no idea. The only ones we actually know about are the other, say 10%. I know those numbers don't add up, but 10% that you're aware of, thinking about. You have to sit down and concentrate, tie your shoelace, or make a decision on what you're going to do next. We're in an environment right now where ambiguity and uncertainty dominates. We've got a whole lot of questions around what's the planet going to do with the tipping point for climate change. We've got questions inside, technology innovation, social change in terms of values. There's a lot of things at play that don't make the old patterns and predictability of things work anymore. And so in my own life, sort of when I embarked on this bigger mission, everything fell away. You jump into the ambiguity and the uncertainty of it all, and you learn more about what you can do. And so, it's kind of a live-in, full-on experience, but it has everything to do with resilience, with big picture thinking, brought down to what are the innate personal skills I have to change my awareness in the moment and do something else other than what I'm used to doing, step into that new zone. So I hope that
No, that's great. I feel like I have to give this to my father and be like, this is why I make the choices that I do, Father.
Yeah, it's exactly it. It's exactly it, because the old past has been around. It's predictable. Can we, and we're not even close to that anymore. Not close.
And even when we thought it was predictable, I think in hindsight it was actually quite unpredictable, and there was a level of denial in the unpredictability of the past.
Yeah. And there's another part to it too, and that is that people take for granted that what they see is what they see. So there's a lot of narrow framing in business decision making, which happens to ignore social, emotional, ecological. There's a whole bunch of stuff going on, and if your company is fixed on making a profit, you're pretty much going to be ignoring, if you think that's your purpose, you ignore everything that makes it. So there's not the scope isn't there. So there's a whole widening of perspective that's required, and also a deepening of the sensory capacity to navigate, because you can't navigate using your mind. That's a fear-based approach. You need to navigate more using more of what you've got, and I think that's the fundamental challenge. And yeah, it is definitely challenging the older generations, because the ones that have come up with a fixed approach to things are finding it very difficult. Yeah.
So what's the value in playing games in order to learn new skills? I've been asking. This is a question I'm asking everyone.
Yeah, it's a great question, because the interesting thing about games is that people, because I've been facilitating game playing for a long time, people when they hear games, first of all, you run into that. Well, I'm too serious for that. You know, I don't want to. In reality, the highest form of intelligence comes out through play. And it's because we're using more of you. You're not just trying to process it intellectually, you're using your creative sources, you're using a whole lot. So people remember it, they engage, you're not forcing them to be, you don't have to be smart intellectually, you can just be smart overall. And just, so it's a much more relaxed approach to getting the hard things done. I've been playing around with virtual reality gameplay and looking at how we can use that to accelerate our decision making. There's a whole lot more flow embedded in gameplay than there is anything you can find in just purely intellectual work.
And what makes this conference special to you? Have you been here before? And sort of what makes this particular conference really stand out?
It's my first time here. I got invited and I thought, oh cool, I'd love to come back. So come back to Boston area. But what you find here are people that love to learn. And there's nothing that creates a nicer buzz than people that are interested in exploring and learning together, and they're not cranky overall because they're having a good time. So that's what I love about this kind of conference. It's small, so it's not overwhelming. If it's too big, it gets a little bit too much information all at once. But it's just a nice size, and it will grow, but it also will have, because of the nature of the people who organize it, they know that too many is not a good thing, less is better.
That's it. Thank you so much
All right.
for chatting with us.
Well, thank you for allowing